live, and now it does. Oh my God. All right. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna just have to rehash most of that. Is that
So we don't.
okay?
You're saying we have none of that.
We no, I screwed that up. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
Sorry to the
We're good.
live listeners. I just realized I completely screwed that up. I clicked go live and I didn't click go live a second time, and
Are
just
you
didn't even
sure?
realize that.
You didn't
Yeah.
click the "Are you sure" button.
Yeah, I didn't click the
Mm.
like, are you
Are
sure
you
you want to go
really, really
live
sure?
at the time you're supposed to be live? Are you really, really, really sure? Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power, take two. And we are live with Tim Nyberg of the MacGuys Plus. Welcome back to Command Control Power, Tim.
It feels just like a few seconds ago. It's great.
Feels like only yesterday.
Oh man, well, a peek behind the scenes. I just completely screwed up the live broadcast there, so apologies again for that. And it's great to have you back, Tim. We were talking before we went live. We were talking about how long you've been doing this. Now, remind our listeners when you got your start. Was it? Tell me.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember this. The 90s, the 1990s.
Yeah,
Is that
1991 when I
right?
was in college. Yeah, I started doing
Wow.
support, but it really kind of started before that. I knew I had a problem when my mom came into my room and yelled at me because I took apart my brand new Commodore 64 because I was trying to overclock the floppy drive.
Oh,
It
wow.
was, we had a little paper disc. It was paper, that you
Wow.
cut out and you put on the
Yeah.
drive, and you tried to get
Wow.
a couple extra, I don't know, minutes out of it at that point, probably. I don't know how bad it was, but she was like, "What? We just paid $400 for it. It's okay, Mom. It's okay."
Right.
And so, I kind of started out with the Commodore earlier than that. I remember meeting up with the greasy guy in the van that had all the stolen software so you could get all the games. He'd like, "Hey, I know a guy that's got all the games." And
Wow.
yeah, so and then I got into college and started out at the student newspaper there, and they had just got their first round of new shiny computers, this new Macintosh. And I went to school for graphics early on, so the graphics program had a few of those, and I was kind of interested in that. So I started working for the paper, and then ended up kind of taking care of their computers, and it was pretty cool. System 5 and System 6.
Wow.
And System 7. I remember migrating between all those early operating systems and hooking up Apple Talk and going around campus and helping people with their computer and making a little side money and typing papers in and doing stuff on the Mac, which was kind of cool. So yeah, it went back quite a way. It's kind of sad to think back that it went back that far. There's some days I go, wow, time has really gone really fast. And I would like to be 30 years younger, or maybe just live to be another 100 years older if I could do it. But but time certainly has gone by and things have changed a lot. If Captain Kirk only could see where we've gone with the iPhone now, right?
Right.
Well, he's still alive, so I think the answer is yes, he can. Yeah. Aldous, you're mentioning page setting with these Macs in college, and I was thinking about Aldous PageMaker, the first desktop layout program. That and Freehand.
Freehand was big, yep. And then Adobe bought PageMaker, and eventually it became InDesign.
Right.
Yep. The early InDesign version 1.0 was a lot PageMaker like. It still had a lot of the keyboard commands, and to watch all those changes, that just brings back a lot of memories. Putting Quark Express in 20 discs at a time, and just all those updates over the years, and how easy it is now. I used to carry this big roller bag around, and I had this big 9 gigabyte external SCSI drive that I bought with my own money, and the thing was like the size of a loaf of bread. And carry that around, and you'd have to make sure your SCSI IDs were all set up right, and all the so you got like 5 devices, and you were out troubleshooting like SCSI ID conflicts, and zapping the PRAM just to get the machine to start. And the early Macs, I mean, the new ones are so much more reliable when I look back. The troubleshooting things we do now are at a much higher level.
Where's my SCSI Terminator, right? Where's my SCSI
Terminator? Right. Yeah, some of the good ones, the little light on them.
And what I miss too is save changes and shut down. When did that stop? Where we actually, there was a time where you shut down regularly, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
When did that go away? I wonder. System 9, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I remember listening to you guys talk about early OS 10. That reminds me of like the first version of OS 10. It was really kind of scary when they went from 9 to 10. That operating system, I think the first version that came out was actually just for server. So we put that on some machines at a client I had at the time, and it was scary. I was like, oh man, we're underwater on this. We're going to be in big trouble.
It was a whole new world. I mean, it looked really slick, but part of the time, the systems, the hardware couldn't even keep up with like the graphics. You know, it was
That's
like
right.
you know, they were drawing all these fancy like looking graphics. Like it was way more kind of graphically intensive than than System 9 was, OS 9. And it to the point where the hardware almost couldn't keep up in certain cases. And you're asking yourself this question, like, who asked for this? Like, did we need this, fancy new, like glossy looking thing? Like, I thought I knew the old systems really well. Like, yeah, sure, extension conflicts were really annoying, and troubleshooting control panels and extensions and whatnot. But we had tools for that. We had processes, and so yeah, here we are, like with a whole new system that's based on a whole new like underlying framework from Next and Unix and all. It was like, oh boy, here we go. Like we have to learn something completely different. But how? I mean, you've been doing it long enough, Tim, to know that. And I mean, what's your secret, like to be able to stay current? And because I see a lot of people being sort of passed by in the industry at some point. You get to a certain point and you just say, that's it for me. This isn't what I signed up for.
Oh, for sure. I think some of it's just a passion to learn new things. Like I dabble with a lot of different things. I got ham radio, beekeeping, gardening. I mean, I just do a lot of different stuff, and so it's part of my personality, and the willingness to want to solve that problem, is kind of baked into you a little bit. Being willing to look it up when you don't know what the answer is. And I tell my kids this story all the time. I say, you got to be careful as you get older, because you remember there was an old guy when radio came out, and he said, oh, that darn radio, these kids are going to fry in hell listening to that radio. And then black and white TV came out. And the next old guy said, oh, that black and white TV, you're going to burn out your eyes. And then it was color TV, and then it was rock and roll, and then it was D&D, now it's iPad, and you don't want to become that guy, that's like saying, hey, this new technology is the thing that's going to, send everybody to hell. Right. It's just, that's the natural progression of technology. It's always going to be moving forward. And I think the minute you jump off that bus, you start getting old, because, I go out to clients all the time, and it's like they've completely turned off a part of their brain to this technology. They just, they just want it to work, and they can't understand why their mouse wiggles all over the place when they turn it upside down.
Right. Yeah. Those guys, talking about the kids today and their rock and roll, they've all been right. I wouldn't necessarily dispute that it's like going in a certain direction. They're not wrong, but at the same time, we can easily start to sound like that. Like, I'm not the earliest adopter, of the newest technology. I like to have a good understanding of it, but I think, there's also this. I tend to try to resist the trends, a little bit. So it's not that I think AI, chatbots are a trend that's going to go away, but it's one of these things where I think it's good to have a healthy kind of distance from some of it too. Like before you get completely swept up in it, go in with intention. But another thing I like to think about too is like, what is the technology that that the next generation or the one after that will be using that will be kind of incomprehensible to me? Like, surely there will be something at some point that like I don't grasp in the same way that like my parents don't grasp, most of the current technology, for example.
Well, I think only if you give up. I mean, because unless there is like an industry shattering new technology, as long as you're relatively up to date on stuff, everything's just going to be an incremental change. Like, the next iPhone is going to be a little bit better, and the next computer is going to be a little bit faster. When you jump off the bus and then wait 6-7 months or a year, even that's enough time to see some changes. So unless there's something really new, I think if you're in technology, it would be, even AI isn't all that crazy scary for me. Like we've been dabbling with that stuff since the beginning, like trying to get computers to do things without us being directly involved. So it's hard to say. I think it's going to have to be something completely brand new in order to make us like really stand back and go, wow, I have no idea what this is.
It'll be like telepathy or it'll be some kind of, like a new interface or just something that's like, it has to be a complete departure from, anything we know. To your point, like just these incremental updates, if you stay with them, it's, you can kind of keep riding that train. But yeah, at a certain point, I don't know. I feel like at some point it'll be too fast for me. It's got to be. It's inevitable. Maybe I'll be dead at that point. But
maybe focus, right? This is the way I think of it. When a doctor goes into medicine and he studies, he's a foot doctor, he just works on your foot. He's not that worried about the changes in hearing aids and all the other stuff. So when AI comes out, I don't really have to be an expert with AI because, that's not something that, I have to do. I could get good at that, but 90% of the questions customers have are probably going to be in a much smaller zone. And, of course, when you're younger, I think that area that you decide that you're going to try to absorb is bigger. You probably have a bigger bandwidth. You stay up till midnight. You don't have a family. You're going to learn it all. And as you get older, you start getting a better work-life balance and say, you know what? It's kind of like I just cleaned all my Unix books off my shelf. It's like, you know what? I don't need to have 20 Unix books anymore. I kept the couple that I might need to reference and the rest I'm giving away. So you make a little room and you focus on an area that you just naturally do it because people call you and ask questions and then you figure them out. And so you just kind of get funneled into an area. And Joe, you kind of work mostly remote now, don't you?
Yeah, almost 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's going to narrow it down. You don't have to be a Meraki expert anymore, right? Because you're not going out and installing this hardware on their network. And that's kind of where I am too. I kind of want to be all remote and take on those customers where I just fill a particular need for their company. Like I'm going to do the light touch IT where I make sure that your machine's got a security footprint on it and you've got, all the tools are working and we manage the updates and patches. But to do all that stuff, I don't have to know anything about the firewall. Or a lot of other things. So it does focus you down a little bit naturally. I think it just happens. You kind of get into your specialty and you say, this is how I'm going to do it. And not everybody is a perfect fit customer. So you find the ones that need what you're good at and you stick with that.
Nice. And how have you gotten so comfortable with remote? Because I think that's another kind of area where a lot of people do it the old way. Like you really like to go on site and that's where you feel most effective. And that's perfectly valid. But remote, I mean, for me, it's like my whole world. So how was that different for you, Tim? Like kind of, transitioning to, I mean, now you want to be all remote, you've said. So was it easy to just sort of like continue? Like, were you a Mac Helpmate user in the very old days, or
Well, I've been around a really long time. So first, I had to give up smoke signals, and that was really tough for me.
Nice.
So once I could let that go, then I could work on the new stuff.
I guess Timbuktu was the other one. After smoke signals, it was Timbuktu, right?
Timbuktu was smoke signals, then Timbuktu, smoke signal 2, and then just progressed from there. Timbuktu was the start, but the problem was that internet speed was pretty slow, and it just was usable, and I was using that. It was really a different tool. Now with like Splashtop and TeamViewer and all these other ones, they've gotten so much quicker. I mean, maybe the real answer there is that the internet's gotten so much faster and more accessible. I mean, when I first started going out, I remember going places and we'd run Ethernet cables on the floor and put like a 10 megabit Asante switch on the floor with 10 ports on it. And now they've got a network, literally there's nothing run through the walls. We were dragging stuff on the ground. So, using remote tools has gotten a lot better because I think the infrastructure around it has just developed so much. And so that is part of what's made being remote easier. The only time I really would have to go on site is hardware. And so I just don't get customers that have that kind of demand. I'm like, what? We're going to order a new machine every 4 years from the Apple Store. You're going to get the Apple Care warranty on it in case there's an emergency. For professionals, I try to come up with a way to say, okay, we need a backup plan for you because you're working on your own. So are we going to have an extra machine? Are we going to get you set up to work off an iPad? And I just take all that into consideration all up front, and we can have a good experience with that. And everything else we can do remote.
Nice. Yeah. What about just like the sort of consulting approach there, in terms of like, yeah, of course, like technology's gotten better and the remote access is easier. And, but as far as like, I don't know, the soft skills of technology consulting, like what do you find has worked for you with remote versus on-site? Is it just the same?
Well, it makes me laugh because I think about all the people that you try to walk through getting connected to their computer remotely.
Yeah.
The soft
Right.
skill is learning how to mute myself before I go crazy on them on the
Yeah.
phone. And then, at 20 minutes is like my limit. At 20 minutes, if I can't get them connected remotely, I tell them it's got to be an on-site visit. But it really is. I think one of the reasons, at least I feel that, I'm not $1 million company, but I feel like my success is in part my ability to talk to my customers. And because I like doing lots of different things, it makes it easy to talk to people. And I usually don't talk to them about their computer. I talk to them about, I come into their house and I see a garden, or I come into their small business and I see something going on. We talk about that. And then, the computer, we're there to work on it. I kind of figure out what they're doing with their computer. They don't want to talk about the computer any more than you want to talk about your car when you drop it off. And that's kind of how I view it. I'm going to fix the computer and I talk to them as much as I need to. But most of the time when I'm doing a remote with a customer, I'm talking to them about completely other stuff. How's the weather in Arizona? Or, hey, I hear you're in Spain right now. That's pretty cool. And, we talk about that and I'm clicking away on stuff. And every now and then I'll kind of pause and say, just to keep you up to speed, I'm doing this and doing that. And I'm going to add this new thing to your computer. You're going to see me clicking around. If you have a question, just let me know. And then we just keep chatting and I keep working. And, nice. If there's somebody on the other end, if it's just doing maintenance and updates and Addigy, then I just talk to myself and no one cares.
Yeah, same. Nice.
Tim, listening to you and hearing about your remote experience, and maybe it's just, this is a left-handed way of me complaining, but it all sounds pretty hunky-dory. Do you have those challenging conversations with clients? I mean, I'm sure you do, but for me, and I've talked about this before on the show, I have a rough time. I'm very comfortable speaking with clients, but client engagement, I think right now is at an all-time low, at least for me. Right.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
As recently as last evening, when I shared a chat that somebody texted me and I shared it with Joe, that they had done a drive replacement in their Drobo, that I had spoken to them about replacing. Now, this is a professional photographer. And we talked about Drobo is out of business, and they went belly up. And if we lose this data, we may not be able to replace it. And, she's just talking about like, well, I want to turn off this uninterruptible power supply because it's beeping and I'm having a dinner party.
Right.
And I just replaced a drive in my Drobo. And if I turn off the uninterruptible power supply, is it going to, will something bad happen? And I'm like,
while it's rebuilding the drive.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is texted to me, this
it's
is like
texted as a prefix, quick question, right?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. Yeah. And so this is someone who, I haven't spoken to on the phone in months, and they are part of our managed service plan, but engagement is at an all-time zero these days. So maybe you could pass on to me and maybe our listeners, obviously you've got a very charming personality, but do you have any other secrets to getting people on board and engaged with your plan?
Well, there's a lot of levels to that, of course. One is I have a bunch of email templates I have set up so that when people just email me out of the blue, the first email they get is, sorry, I can't help you unless you're on a plan. I mean, that's the short version. It's a little longer and more eloquent. It says, we either have to schedule a billable remote session, here's the link, or we need to have you on a plan. So a lot of people don't respond. I put them in my database. I'll follow up with emails, doing marketing kinds of things. And, some of them sign up, some of them don't. So there's that. And then there's just the engagement part. I try to go through and send out a few emails a month. And I know that's a little bit different than talking to them in person, but it's part of the process, a couple times a month at least, like, hey, and I try to make them very personal, even though 80 people or whatever get the same email, hey, Bob, things are looking pretty good. If you have any questions, I just wanted to check in. And it'll literally be that short, but, they may know some of this is automated, but a lot of people don't think about it, because it really isn't it's generic enough. And so I try to send a few of those out a month so they feel like I'm touching base with them. And then if they respond, they need something. And if they don't, then I just close the ticket. And then I've got reminders set up so that whenever, everybody's really month to month, but I kind of have them set up as a, 1 year renewal. And that just reminds me. So part of my process is, I get them on this monthly plan, and once a year, depending on the plan they're on, they get a certain amount of time where we do a remote and I go over the machine. And so when that time comes up, my wife does a lot of work for me. She does a lot of the admin, paperwork she takes care of the money, otherwise we'd be in trouble. So, part of the process is we have a checklist for her, and she calls them and she checks on the credit card to make sure it's up to date. She talks to them for a little bit, and, that's a touch point. And then she just kind of feels them out to see where things are at. And then if there's a problem, she assigns a ticket to me. So that becomes a touch point. And then I try to go through, Watchman or Addigy, and we can talk more about Watchman because I got thoughts about that process. But and then if I see stuff that's glaring, of course, then I call them. I try to look for reasons to reach out. But even with all that, it's not the same as when you'd go out and show up with a box of donuts and spend the day there working on stuff. But when I started doing this, you'd go out somewhere and you'd sit down at somebody's computer, and if they had 6 people in their little graphics department, you might be there for a week. Because you'd sit down at one computer and it would take you 4 or 5 hours to get that machine done. You run Norton's on it, you optimize the drive, and then you have to manually install updates that you downloaded somewhere else that had a faster internet connection, because you couldn't just download stuff at people's place because it would take their network down. So you've got your drive with all the updates on it, and then you're updating all their stuff. And
oh man, I forgot about having those drives back in the day. I had one too with all we would bring the updates like AOL, you'd bring the software. I was like, it's blowing my mind to remember that we were doing that until not too long, like 5 or 10, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Because their internet was some places didn't have really good internet, or they were still an ISDN, or they had a dial-up modem. Right. So you'd go back to your office that had a T1, and you'd download all the updates and bring them around, and so you were there for a much longer time. And I would sit and talk to the people when they were at their computer, and you ask them how it's going. You talk about their kids, you look at the pictures and see what's on their desk, and you use that as a way to start a conversation. And now, I know we worry about the engagement, but in part, I think people are just used to that because that's how everything works. The fact that you call them on the phone ever is better than almost any other support out there. The fact that they can reach you and get a call back. I mean, most places, websites now, they drive me crazy. It's another thing I have on my list here to talk about, but I go to these websites and I say, I want to go, oh, this is a great service. I wonder if they have an option for vendors so I can offer this to my clients. Like this, I'm looking for like a list removal kind of tool where customers can, you know what I mean? So you go, but there's absolutely no place on that site where I can get a hold of somebody. You send them an email and maybe they get back to you, maybe they don't, so I think if you stick with some engagement ongoing, even if it's email, and you call them when they need you, that's great these days.
Yeah. I had that response just last night. We were talking business, and my wife said, something about, how high our rates are. And like, it's sort of like, it's lucky that there are people that will pay this kind of rate. And, what if people just can't pay that anymore? Like, that kind of thing. And just calling it into question a little bit. And I'm thinking, we charge these rates because we call people back, because people can reach us on the phone, because we're responsive, because we answer their questions, because we keep them secure, because we care, because we have integrity. Like all those things that I just listed, I thought like were just normal things that everyone does and should do. It took me like a ridiculously long time to realize that those are actually things that set us apart from other people as like a value in our business. And it's just to your point about like other vendors and things, it's very frustrating expecting any level of service and support from anyone. And I mention it now, like the place I dropped off the van to get some service, the tire place we just did the tires a few months ago. The fact that these companies are actually really nice to work with, like they're friendly, they follow up, they send you things like that you ask for, like, the PDF of the thing, or, I'm not even talking about discounts or anything. It's just like what I thought was very basic business, like, practices that they actually still do. It's notable now, which is kind of sad. But that is, I think, what can set us apart as people who've been doing it for a long time, because we have those standards, like to actually, be available when somebody needs help. It's outside of our quote business hours, but like I can just understand you're having a hard time here. Like, I'm going to call you back because I care. Or the fact that like you call people back in general, like I can't even believe the number of places you call and they don't even respond. They don't even call you back. Hi, I have 2 clients for you, Mr. Electrician. Like, can you call me back? No response. A week later, call again. Nobody answers. Nobody responds. I mean, it's just like, it's absurd to me. And so anyway, that's my little rant, but it is a value add to actually be a company who does do those things, right?
To actually talk to your customer. Yeah.
Yep.
I've been trying to get an electrician out to do a few things for me. And it's been 3 months. And they keep saying you're on the list. And my list is getting shorter because I've replaced half of those things now on my own. By the time he gets here, there ain't going to be nothing left. But well, that's how it goes, right? I'm only going to go so long. And I got 20 extra minutes. I'm just going to replace the outlet on my own.
There's this local chain, kind of like our version of a diner here in the Midwest. It's like in the Northeast, there's diners on every corner. Here we have a place that's like a breakfast brunch place that's kind of, to me, is like a diner vibe. But it's very, very popular on the weekends. They don't take reservations. You have to show up and put your name in and then kind of just hang around. So we joke about, like, as we're walking by, like, these people are actually in line for the, like, the lunch service, because it's like 9 a.m. Like, they're never getting a table. Like, it's like, just, I feel like that, like, well, I don't even have a house right now, but like, I should call an electrician now, like with a list of things that I can anticipate I might need someday for my house, and just like get on the list, because like, it's anybody's guess if anybody will ever get a call back from these lists sometimes. But so, I mean, shouldn't that work in our business though? The fact that like you have this client engagement, you're reaching out, like there's a little reminder that you're still there, a little offer of what you might do. Have you found that helpful, Tim, like with all these little touch points you're describing?
Yeah, I do think it's helpful because, like I said, I don't think that they realize you're sending that one email out to 20 people because it just says, hey, Jim, just checking in to see how things are going. Did you need anything? Tim. And, 20 people get it at once. They don't all know that. But I mean, they think that you're reaching out to them. So, I think that matters. I don't get emails like that from any of the people I work with. So even that would be great. Or it's so obviously junk mail.
That is helpful, Tim, because actually I do not do that. I figure, Sam's articulated the same feeling on the show before. Sometimes if you're getting this recurring revenue from a client and that you're doing them a solid because you're watching their computers or watching their backups through Addigy and through offline backup, that sometimes if you poke the polecat, it'll come back to bite you, and so some of them are like, I'm glad you reached out to me because like I'm not sure what I'm paying for here, and then you have to maybe resell your services. So sometimes we're a little I'm guilty of this, we're a little bit afraid to engage, especially if you've already got the fish on the line.
But I think that, a couple times a month I'll use Adam's content. Maybe if I get a really good tip that somebody maybe asked me about, I will, maybe shorten it up a little bit, send out a little email and say, hey, I was thinking about you and here's this tip.
Right. And to be clear, we're talking about Adam Engst and the Tidbits Content Network, which has, if you're not subscribing, you have to do it today. If you're a ACN or you're an MSP, it's a great place to stay current with what's out there. And also, just very much forward facing to your clients that you're on the ball and exactly what's happening.
Right.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
great
sending
content.
that out like you're describing, Tim, like in a newsletter type thing. And it's almost like I'm presenting this to my clients. I don't say, by Adam Engst, and that's what we're allowed to do with the Tidbits Content Network. But are you making a distinction there between, sending out like Adam's content, the Tidbits Content Network, like as a newsletter en masse to your clients versus like, sending out the 20 emails? Are those emails coming from MailChimp or whatever service, or are they coming right from your, email app?
Yeah. So, both. I will do a monthly newsletter, much like Jerry does. I'm on his list, and I like to see what he's up to. And I go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And it just reminds people that you're out there, and they get that. And I usually do get some kind of response from that. I know people look at it. You can kind of look at the click rate, and you kind of get an idea that they're looking at that for tips. And I hardly ever advertise anything in there for a service at all. Usually I put a little thing at the bottom, but most of it's just tips. And then I will send out directly through, RepairShopper, which I use. And I use the marketer function in there, which is not great, but it does the job. And I will send out emails, and I slice and dice my list pretty good. So sometimes I'll send something out to just lawyers. And I'll go, oh, here's 30 lawyers on my list. And I'll say, this would be a great idea for you guys. If you have questions about it, let me know. But I was thinking of you, and here's a link, and I'll put it in. And then maybe later it'll be something that's, Adobe is announcing they're no longer supporting type 1 fonts. And I'll send that out to my graphics people. And, if I find something fitting, I will try to do a email, even if it's not to everybody. And that feels even more personal. So I could be better with that. I think we all could be better with those things. But I try to take advantage of the content for that. And, and sometimes I just make up my own stuff. I just send out a note. Which is fine, which sounds kind of funny. You make it seem like, hey, you make up your own stuff. Well, that's crazy. Well, yeah, we get so much great content from Adam and other places that, I don't do as much of that as I used to do, but I still try to send stuff out, that's more personal when I can.
How about you, Joe? Do you use that RepairShopper marketing tool?
I don't use the RepairShopper marketing tool. I just use their, if I'm communicating with a client about an active open item, I use the email sending through the ticketing system. But my normal methods are to send it with MailChimp. Like if I write it or use a Tidbits Content Network, story or tip or whatever, I combine some of those and I send it out. Yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of I might be recommending backups. I might be recommending upgrading to Sonoma, those kinds of things where there could be billable work. But I've found, I think like you're describing, Tim, like the responses are not necessarily even to what the tip was or what the recommendation was. It's just an opportunity for them to respond to something, which is, half the battle. And then the other thing I do that I found useful is actually just sending from Mail app. I'll even... I'll make I'll just copy and paste, obviously. But sending it that way, they see it's to their address and it's from my address. It's not like on behalf of, it's not like this fancy, newsletter system. It's not a formatted email that's, a fancy looking body of the email. It's just a normal text email that I'm sending out to them. And they will open those. They'll see it's from me, and I don't know that they're opening it, but a lot of times they do reply to those. And so sometimes I'm just like, it's a reminder every month, on schedule to do this thing that I've been telling you to do for half a year, but I send it to them directly as opposed to to a list of, 100 people.
Yeah, you're a better person than me. I don't give anybody my personal email address. I have enough mail there to sort out. If it's coming from a customer, I keep it in RepairShopper just so that I know I can find it. And part of that is just my working remote strategy, right? I think that your personal touch is really good, and I totally see value in it. But when I say I want to spend 3 weeks, in Europe, cruising the Mediterranean or doing something, I want to bring my iPad and be able to work off of that and know that if they're reaching out to me, it's going to come into one place. And it makes it easier for me to do better response for them, because if they're sending stuff other places, then I'm looking at 8 places, and I want to drink a rum drink with an umbrella in it at that moment. I don't want to have to look at 9 places, right? I want to get it done. So so part of that's just the streamlining that I do in order to make, having a remote business work. Is it frees up some of my time, but I want to have some of that operational efficiency so that I'm not spending 2 hours going through email. I try to
I'm definitely facing the downside of, having to search, where did I contact this person? I'll contact them through email, but then I'll just update RepairShopper and say, contacted, emailed so-and-so. So it's I have my little internal note that I'll remember to go look at my email. So it's double entry. It's not ideal. Also, to your point about standardizing on the tool and putting it all in RepairShopper, does that make it easier for you to hand off to a virtual admin, for example, who might be able to just flag things that desperately need you, whereas everything else can kind of wait?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
because Yeah, you just create a user in there for them, and then they can go through it. And it's in one place. You know, they're not checking my email and 5 other places. You know, it's going to go in there. So I direct everything into that spot. Even when I send out my newsletter, the reply to address on that goes in there. So if they get the newsletter and reply to it, I get it in my PSA, and then I just respond from there. They, you know,
wow.
Yeah, it just, everything goes to one spot. Just everything funnels to there for communication. It just makes it easier for me. And they're getting responses. So I don't really think they care where you're responding from. Although the personal touch, knowing it's come from you, I think there's value in that. But I think for me, it outweighs the operational part of it. I just want it in one spot to make it easier.
So not to slag on RepairShopper, but we may have newer MSPs or ACNs listening to this. Would either of you guys, I don't use RepairShopper. Joe has given me some feedback over the years on RepairShopper. Would either of you encourage new entries into the system to look at that, or where do you land with this?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to try to be, I think RepairShopper does everything a small shop needs to do at an affordable price. I don't think it does any of it really well. You know, it's no Zendesk when
Sounds
it comes
like me.
to help desk.
except the affordable price part.
Yeah, well, you know, that's okay. You got to make a living, you know, support the mansion.
That's right.
So, you know, I mean, it does everything that I need it to do. None of it is great, but it does it. You know, Marketer works pretty good, but when I go to search my list and send stuff out, I can't even do an and or an or. So I can't go in there and pick a list and say, you know, I want everybody that's in this, say everybody that's residential that's not on a plan. I can't do that. So, you know, it's not great. So it has a lot of limitations, but you know, it's affordable. So it's a trade-off, you know, and I'm still using it. So I can't bitch about it too much, but there's a lot of feedback that I've sent them, and clearly they, you know, don't want to do that. And that's okay. Cause Synchro is kind of their upgraded version. And you know, that they charge $135 a month, or about, last time I looked, per user. And for me, that's just not reasonable, because in RepairShopper, you know, my wife does admin work and she needs to log in. My son is very techie. I send him out on gigs all the time, and he needs to log in, and I log in, and I got to log in for my accountant. And, you know, boom, I'm up to $1,000 a month, and none of those people generate revenue except me. So, you know, so that's one of the reasons I stick with RepairShopper, because, you know, if I have to pay for all these other extraneous users, which Synchro, for example, would make you do, or I'm sure ConnectWise and, you know, all the other ones, you know, that's just not for me as a small business. My business isn't big enough to pay that. So I would say, yeah, I would recommend it to people, with the caveat that it probably will do everything they want it to do. It just won't do any of it, you know, at that super premium level. Like, it's not a Zendesk, so it won't be that extensible, but it's, you know, pretty good.
Yeah, I would completely agree with what you said. I mean, for me, it's a cost-based decision right now, both in terms of the financial cost of, like, you know, at probably any other tool, even though right now it's back to just me and Tim on my team. So there's two of us, and probably not, you know, maybe well, actually, it would be a need for Jerry as well, because he also contracts for us. But so there you go, 3 users. I mean, it probably wouldn't be insurmountable to look at other tools, but there'd also be the switching cost to go to another tool, and relearn it and migrate data and this kind of thing, and also vetting the different options. I did, like, you know, I looked at SuperOps at Aces. I thought that looked pretty interesting. I'm sure there's a number of other alternatives out there, but for now, it does what I need it to do. It's very, as I put it, like web, I don't know if it's web 1.0 or 2.0. It's sort of like, you know, certain things require a page refresh kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
You know, which is just like, wow, okay, they haven't addressed that, and I guess they don't really see the need to, you know, and you know, but it functions. You get to learn its quirks, and it pretty much does what I need to do. It's just not super efficient when, you know, I'm not using it as much as I probably would be using Zendesk as a ticketing system, because RepairShopper is that much more limited. The automations are useful to the extent that they offer those automations, but they don't offer an automation for everything like Zendesk probably would. So, you know, it's not very fancy, but it gets the job done in kind of in a minimal way. If you don't have any system, it's not a bad system, but these days I think there's probably a lot better options out there, possibly for more money, but
Yeah, there's a ton of options out there for those tools, but it's enough, and I am trying to scale back on expenses, and I don't want to spend more money. So I stick with it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to gripe about it when I run into trouble, but it does the job for me. So I stick with it. And, it makes me think of Watchman, which does integrate with RepairShopper, but I'm thinking about, chopping Watchman off at the knees. It's been a great tool. I've loved it, and I loved Alan, but I think Watchman's getting a little long in the tooth, and I can do most of that in Addigy now, and I'd rather recover that $200 a month. So not that I don't love it, but it's kind of the same thing with the RepairShopper. It's the right thing for the right money, and you just got to be efficient with your money when you're a small business. You can't be throwing money out the window.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll say it. In a recent show, we brought this up and we talked a little bit more extensively about it. I mean, present day, when I had it, my subscription lapsed. I don't love it. There was very little to love there. I couldn't get reports out of it that were anything that I could send to a client that didn't look primitive. And, I have a free solution for the support menu. I mentioned that on the other show. So there was very little it was doing for me, and I rather put a little bit more time on the computer to extract those details and just save the money, because I think
laziness is the only reason I have for not having dumped it already, because after listening to you talk about it, I was like, well, why am I still using this? And I sat there and thought, when's the last time I went in there to get something? And then I went, oh my God, it's been like 2 months. I've paid $400 and I haven't been in there in 2 months to get something. So maybe this is a poke for Jason over at Addigy, that we need some reporting, and we need a couple other features in the GUI that would make it really nice. And we'd love to see those added. And I love Addigy and working with their stuff. I was actually talking to Ben Greiner today about different things. So it's a great tool, but there's a few things I would like to add to it when I think about getting rid of Watchman, because it does put that stuff in a really clear, easy way to see.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really do that in Addigy. You get on that devices screen, and all the custom facts and stuff are in there. But like if I want to get the actual year that a computer is made, like I got to try to remember what I'm command Fing to look for it. Like, is that the year, the model? What thing am I going to have to find on this scrolling page of 1,000 items in order to
trying to find the IP? Is it Command F for the word client IP or IP underscore address, or like I'm trying to remember if it's the WAN or the LAN IP, which one is listed which way. So yeah, to your point, I mean, it would just be amazing to have like a column of like checkboxes next to the custom facts and the other device facts that are just in that big long list of the ones that I want to appear at the top. Like have a little edit button there, and then check the boxes, and then save, and then those just get populated across like a main dashboard at the top. And you can't
as devil's advocate, but Jason's sitting out there right now saying you can do that. So you can go to the devices page and you can make a custom list. And
the devices page. I would like to see that on the Go Live overview page. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I think that they're 99% of the way there, and it would just take just a little bit of UI tweaking to make that a really nice thing. And it wouldn't be that far off. And I pull my hair out sometimes trying to find data. You're on the phone with a customer and this data is right there. Well, listen to us whine about all these conveniences, boy, all remotely yet.
Yeah. Considering where we've come from. So yeah, I mean, but you're right. They're so close, and that, like, adding a couple of those features would just be like an amazing improvement that would essentially supplant Watchman monitoring. So the value is so much higher for Addigy, like in terms of, what you're getting on the per device cost basis. Like, it would be an absolute no-brainer. Like anybody who's just kind of like skating by with just Watchman at this point, or maybe hesitating on deploying Addigy to more devices because they're also still paying for Watchman. Like you just you save that cost and you invest it right into your Addigy budget. Because now you're getting even more value from Addigy. So yeah, I would love to see them do that. In the meantime, it has all the information. It's just not those green check boxes that I'm looking for. That's the only difference, really. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Well, one of the feature requests I had for them is I want light version that I can install on client machines that only cost me $1 a license or 50 cents a license, but you can't do anything with it. So it'd be like a read-only version of Addigy, so that I can put them in I could still offer that and stick them in a thing. And then if they wanted to upgrade, it would have enough of a connection to the machine where you could then upgrade them to the $3 license and then move them into another policy. It just seems like it'd be a way to get more clients in Addigy, like it'd be good for them, because if I could install this for almost free on every machine that I touch, that I support somewhat, it'd be really easy to upgrade them and use that tool to convince them to get onto a support plan.
Right.
So that'd be, I've got a whole list of things I'd love to see in Addigy, and I'm sure everybody does.
Nice. Well, I mean, it is the beautiful thing about Addigy is there is a great community of people that are, making feature requests, voting for feature requests, implementing features through, the community scripts or the, community facts and things like that, or contributing on Slack. So it's a very robust community. I think some of this stuff will be created. I'm waiting for someone to literally just create some of those like Watchman plugins, like as scripts or device facts that would just be, one click add to your Addigy instance, and now you've got, even if you don't have the beautiful checkbox on the go live screen, at least you'd have the little green dot in the devices list. I mean, I could just have a view where I'm just reviewing that client's machines and it's like green, 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 green. Great. It's almost there. It's just a few of those missing plugins, and I'm sure someone will create them, because we're basically crowdsourcing this, as we speak. So,
well, I don't want to even do that much work. I just want to wait till it emails me and says there's a problem. Is for things like the backup and some of that stuff. I don't want to go in and have to look to see. I mean, it's nice if you can look when you're reviewing with an individual person, but for the most part, I just want that thing to send me an email that pops into RepairShopper that says, "Hey, this machine's 95% full hard drive. What are we going to do?" That's where I want to get. I'm trying to get rid of some of that micromanaging,
manual checking and
exactly. The big checklist I used to have when I went in and somebody had an OS 10 server, and I would pull up my list and I'd paste it into my email response, and I'd go down the list and check it all and then send them the email that said I did all this stuff. And it's just more. There's so much stuff in this industry that can take up your time, and I really want to try to get rid of as much of the stuff the customer doesn't care about and add in as much as they do care about, so that my time is optimized and the value is high for them. And try to move forward to some kind of remote business. And that's where I am at, and I'm not 20 anymore either, so I don't really want to crawl around under computers and drive to 5 different customers a day. I just it's not my thing anymore. I used to do that now, and that's great. So now I just want to do something a little bit different as my business evolves over the years. I've had people, I've had shops, I've worked alone. I've done colo spaces, I've done all those different things, and working at home is much easier.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I've been remote for 4+ years. I mean, actually 6+ years. And working from home, it just has huge benefits in terms of efficiency, quality of life. And, it's great to be able to, as business owners, make those kinds of changes that, we have control over that to some degree. And it's not without a lot of effort, like you're describing, all this background process that we've been through. I had 5 people on my team at one point. I had an office. I had a lot of expenses, and all of that was probably necessary to get to this kind of more lean and mean sort of style of operation. And that's not to say I won't grow in that other direction again, but it's great to be able to decide what you want in life and be able to keep doing it as you're describing. You might continue to do this longer than you would have otherwise, because you're able to do it from anywhere and you can do it into quote unquote retirement.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of my thought. My wife, we talked about this a few years ago, and I said, okay, I'll start working on my business so we can work from anywhere. She's like, oh, wouldn't it be great to go to Costa Rica for a month in the wintertime? And, we've checked those places out, and we'd love to go spend some time somewhere warm. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting to that point now with my business where we could go there. And if I have a good internet connection to my computer, I've got other local, Apple consultants that I know that if I was really in a jam, I could cut them loose on a job and they'd fill in for me, which is super awesome. And then I can do it. So now we just got to get her to the point where she can do it. And she's getting pretty close too. She's, down to 1 day a week at the office. It wouldn't be a lot a big stretch, but you know, it's part of it. I'm changing my business to fit my lifestyle now a little bit, where in the early days you changed your lifestyle to fit your business. And so we're kind of flipping that around as we get over 25.
Tim, I noticed at the top of the show you had mentioned you had some talking points. Do you have anything that any big green check marks that we haven't checked off yet?
Well, you know, I was going to say to see if you guys, what are you doing for like a security audit for people? That was just something I was thinking about, because I had a customer that wanted me to work on something for him. And this is an on-site customer, but, you know, I ran into all these problems with tools that are all made for Windows. You know, they get on the network, they find all these Windows vulnerabilities, and, you know, that none of these people had agents for Mac that actually reported back anything of value. And, you know, if anybody has like a checklist out there that a guy can go out and pull off on his own, that doesn't require, you know, $10,000 investment in tools. It'd be interesting to see what people are doing.
Are you specifically looking for ways to, you know, pen test clients, or just running something automated on the computer to make sure that they're not susceptible to intrusion?
Well,
because I know Joe and I both use Malwarebytes built into Addigy, and we've found that to be pretty invaluable, a really good value for adding it to your stack.
Yeah, I was using that for a while, and then I switched over to SentinelOne, and I can't remember why I chose to move away from that Malwarebytes. I mean, part of it was cost. I ended up getting SentinelOne, I think, probably less per seat than it was. I love that it was built into Addigy, but I figured if Apple's using SentinelOne, then it's probably, I can say that with confidence to my customers and say, hey, if Apple's using it, this is as good as I can give you. So I didn't go that route, but you know, pen testing would be part of it, or doing a dark web scan, or, you know, what do they have a checklist internally? Do we go down and check and make sure they got locks on doors that have computers? Are they using good passwords? I mean, you know, I've got a pretty good list of stuff I'm generating, but it just seems like, you know, there's a lot of little individual pieces here that you can pull in, like the pen test that you can pay some provider to do for you. And, you know, can you go to the MX toolbox and do a DMARC scan? And, you know, what kind of stuff are people putting together for a security audit that we can pull off? Because some of these companies charge, you know, 40 grand to come into a company and do something like this. And, you know, if you can do something like that with your customers, even one that you could do remotely, you know, that helps.
That's
Joe, do you have any?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of looking for the same thing. It's a little bit piecemeal for me, you know, up until now, but I do see that there's a huge value to potentially add, you know, for clients there to be able to offer that as a little bit more comprehensive and systematic method, you know. And I mean, speaking of, like, we've talked about the changes over the years and how, you know, this industry has evolved and how quickly it moves. Security is a big part of that, you know, how much the security kind of landscape has changed. The kind of threat models that we're looking for have changed. You know, people still use the old terminology of, do I have a virus? And it's like, no, and that's probably not what your concern should be, you know. So it's like, you know, you don't have a virus, but, like, you know, you basically allowed someone into your computer.
Yeah, you're a knucklehead.
You know, right. So I mean, there's a lot, you know, or, like, you know, you're using the same password for everything. You don't have a virus or a hacker, but you're gonna have a hacker, and you know. So yeah, it's I would love to invite someone on the show who has, like, done the deep dive on this and can say, you know, everything you guys were talking about wanting, like, this is what I do. Here's my recipe. I mean, if they want to share it, that's great. Or if they want to give us kind of the overview outline version of, you know, I use this tool. Like you mentioned earlier, Tim, I forget if it was before I started broadcasting or not, about, like, looking for a service, you know, along the lines of, like, delete me, or, you know, this type of service. I think that's a big value too, you know, or doing the, you know, the phishing tests with your clients, like being able to offer all of these, some of them being like, this is what we not only recommend, but, like, we insist on, like, this is something that's just included as part of our security package. And here's some other optional things, you know, where they do, you know, dark web monitoring, all those kinds of services that might be add-ons. So I would love to have someone come on and say, you know, here's what you need to do. Like, think about, you know, endpoint security in this way. Think about, you know, security more broadly this way. And you know, website security, email security, you know, if they have a web property, things like that. And then also, like you're talking about physical security. I mean, that's easily overlooked, especially in this remote world. But what is the like, if you have a server that auto logs in and it's behind an unlocked door, like, you might as well just like put your data on the sidewalk and wait for someone to just walk by and take it. So yeah, these are very important questions. So if anyone out there, is the expert on this or knows of an expert on this that wants to bring that to the masses, please let us know, because I think it's a really important topic that I'm personally interested in too. So I know we could all benefit.
This isn't helpful because I won't be able to name any names, but I know 18 months ago I looked at this, trying to sign up for some service that offered phishing, could do phishing and also do a dark web scan and email to the client and maybe charge for that. And, and most of the ones I saw, and they're the ones that we've heard the names battered around, and, again, not to denigrate anybody who's using some of these, but most of them were hokey. In my opinion, like they were
I think a lot of them can be. I actually use CyberGuard 360. So if you go sign up,
that's one of the ones. I tried for a while, and that was
it's okay. But like I would do a pen test with it, and the information that I got back on it was weak. It's like, I can't give this to my customer. Well, this is nothing. There's nothing here. Right. Well, you're supposed to go and then do the sales process. I'm like, yeah, but then if I do the sales process, where's the real data? So I can say I pen test you, and this is what we found. So there is like a higher level, and there's a risk assessment tool that you can use in there. The admin at their end would fill it out, and I'm going to go through that with this customer that I'm working with and see. I'm going to put it on under the flame and see how good it is. And if it comes up with anything valuable enough to be worth using, but that tool's $99 a month. Again, it's not super expensive and it's not great at anything, but it does kind of a lot of stuff. So if if customers want something a lot more, then, it is like, it can be $15,000, $20,000 for these security audits. So maybe what you can do is enough for them, and you kind of don't charge as much money for it. And if they want something more expensive, you get a partnership with a company that gives you a cut when you refer people.
Yeah, I put a lot of these services in the same category as people doing SEO for websites. It's a lot of it's snake oil and a lot of it's hokum schmokum. And I don't know. I'm surprised that we can't find something that satisfies ourselves, other than what you mentioned there with CyberGuard. And I thought that was like a big waste of my time at the end of the day. I'm sorry, but I just,
I don't think it's awesome. I think the reason I keep CyberGuard is that there's like a training module in there so that I can put like my clients into this weekly training short. And, it's a nice thing to add, and you do that to a lot of customers. And that can be valuable enough to be $99, because there's a few other ones like Know Before or something. There's a few more.
Sam's tried that. Sam's tried that one before. And I think since he had mentioned that, and I don't know if he's still a subscriber, they had some sort of a breach of security with login names and passwords and things.
Right?
Ironically,
I think that company is owned by Kevin Mitnick, who was the first cyber hacker. Ghost in the Wire. It was a great book if you guys are into books. But
and he passed away recently.
He did. Wow, I didn't hear that.
I didn't know.
He's the one that was
met him in person.
He's the one that was on Newsweek, right? That they Mitnick is dead. Joe, can you look this up live while I actually have a Kevin Mitnick business card, which was
a lockpick kit.
A lockpick kit.
I got one. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's great. Yeah, he was a great guy to meet. And guess what kind of computer he uses as the #1 security guy in the world? He's on a Mac.
Nice.
So
nice.
I saw him do a couple demonstrations and stuff. And
unfortunately, I think he passed.
Last year it looks like July 2023. So
yeah.
For mysterious circumstances, or that lockpick kit might have got him into the wrong door.
From Wikipedia, it says at age 12, Mitnick convinced a bus driver to tell him where he could buy his own, quote, ticket punch for a quote, school project, and was then able to ride any bus in the greater Los Angeles area using unused transfer slips he found in a dumpster next to the bus company garage. So it's like, I mean, it's kind of to your point earlier, Tim, about, we have an interest in problem solving. It's like there's problem solution. There's a challenge to it that we like. What are those motivations for us? And staying current, enjoying technology. Clearly, at age 12, there, even Kevin Mitnick, he was interested in like like how could I figure this little, challenge out? Like I have this stack of things I could do something with them, and maybe I'll use social engineering before that was even a term to talk to the bus driver. And
oh well,
just,
you should read Ghost in the Wire. He really gets into all the companies where he'd call and just get them over the phone to give up stuff, and he'd just walk in and say, "Oh, I talked to Jim over blah blah blah. I got to work on this," and he'd get into the server room and do his thing and walk out. And he got arrested. And they didn't know exactly what to do with them because he never stole anything.
With, right?
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, like the phone hacking that they did with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, coming up with ways to hack into the phone and use the phone system. Those early guys, so there's the technology advancing, right? Like we're just hacking the phone by learning how to hit buttons on it.
I mean, imagine telling a kid today about phone hacking. It's like you're talking phone hacking like it was just telephones. It wasn't like phone hacking now is the, hacking someone's iPhone and getting access to their, microphone or something like that. Now, back then it was to make calls. That's all.
And they called it, and they called it phone freaking, I believe.
Old freaking. Right. That's right. Yeah, you're right, Jerry. That's exactly right.
So in July of 2023, he died at 59 years old from pancreatic cancer. I looked it up.
Just like Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate to hear that stuff. So much of it's preventable. I mean, it's way off to the side, but I feel horrible when you lose somebody with a mind like that. When 59 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
59 is a lot younger than it used to be.
Yeah.
I just, people live so much longer. When I was a kid, grandpa was died at 64. He retired a few years before that. And he seemed like he was a million years old, and, now I know so many people in their 70s or older and they're still kicking around doing, really well. So time changes a lot of things.
Totally. Yep.
That's really sobering when you look on the internet and you see a picture of Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane, present day. That's a rough one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you hear your favorite rock and roll music in the elevator, you've maybe reached a new point in your life.
That's right.
Jimi
going
Hendrix
down
in the elevator.
going down
in the elevator. Yeah. Oh man. Well, it's been great talking to you, Tim. This has been a really fun conversation, and congrats on the successes and transitions you've made in your business. And it's fun talking about those old days. I missed this earlier. Benjamin Morales in the chat mentioned he was grimacing earlier with the changes in the industry we were talking about, and he's thinking of changing his name to Luddites with a capital IT in the middle. So very clever, and actually there's something to it. It's like just not trying to overpromise anybody anything, and just saying, you know what, we've been here a long time, we know what we're doing, and because I think clients are averse to the opposite attitude, right? When the attitude is like, you've got to get the latest and greatest, you've got to stay current, you've got to get Sequoia on day one. They don't want to hear that. I think it's a breath of fresh air when their IT people are saying, your systems are just fine as they are. So maybe that's a unique angle we could try. But congrats on the long-term success also. It's great to talk to you about, those early days and trace that line all the way through to the present.
Yeah. And you've certainly given us a lot to think about today. And our audience, reach out to us and we'll get Tim back on and we'll all brainstorm here and broadcast it out.
That's right.
Sounds great. Excellent. It's been a great night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tim. All right. I think